Good, welcome back. It's great to have you here. And as we said, do text in those questions during the talk. We'll get through as many as we can at the end. So if I am speaking in 20 minutes' time, still speaking, then feel free to throw a mawam at me or something, and I'll eat it. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions, because we do want to give you opportunity for that. But we're thinking about this really big question today. Convinced God is intolerant. How could there be only one way to God? One of the biggest accusations at the Christian faith and at Christians can be, how can you be so arrogant? How can you claim that you're right and other people are wrong? Because at the centre of the Christian claim is a very exclusive statement. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to God except through me. What about all these other people with different beliefs? I grew up in Leicester, as I said, home of a good rugby team, and also home of the first ethnic majority in Great Britain. More people not from a British background than from a British background living in Leicester. And so as a result of that, massive different religious beliefs in my home city. The school that I went to, engaging regularly with people who were not Christians, who came from different backgrounds. And so you might think, how on earth can you claim the kind of things about Christianity when there were clearly lots of people, not just on the other end of the world, but for me, at the other end of the street and in my class, who didn't believe what I believed? I was chatting to a student a while back, and they said, how can you be so arrogant? How can you claim that Christianity is the only way? They said, listen, I accept everyone, no matter what their beliefs. Why couldn't God do that as well? So it's a big question, isn't it? And I'm guessing that we could come to this question from different points of view. Some people might be coming to this question actually with the assumption really deep down that all religions are actually not true. Okay? You may kind of have respect for people, you want to give them the opportunity to believe what they want to believe, but actually at the bottom you would say no religion is really true. And what I've heard, in fact I heard it 3 times yesterday from different people, was this. Well, you're just a Christian because you were born in Britain. And if you were born in Pakistan, then you wouldn't be a Christian, would you? And that kind of argument gets put around quite a lot. Now, I've heard that some people are quite enjoying filling out fallacy slips and bingo fallacy. So if you want to add another possible fallacy, there's one called the genetic fallacy. And the genetic fallacy says that something must be untrue because of its origin without actually looking into the basis of it. So you say someone's belief must be untrue simply because of the origin of their belief, without actually questioning the basis to their belief, which can be different. I'll throw it a different way. I could say to you, if you were born in Pakistan, the chances are, or there'll be less chance at least, of you being an atheist. Of which, of course, you would say, yes, but I'm an atheist because I've looked into it and I'm convinced it's true. And so I could equally say, yeah, and I'm a Christian because I've looked into it and I'm convinced it's true. And actually, there are lots of atheists in Pakistan and lots of Christians in Pakistan. And actually, the places in the world where Christianity is growing most rapidly today are not particularly in the West, but in places like China and Afghanistan and Iran, where the majority are not Christian and where many of them are first-generation Christians who've discovered it for themselves. So don't slip into that mistake. But there, of course, are other people coming to this question from a very different point of view. And you might be saying, well, hang on a minute, I think all religions are equally true. And so the problem with Christianity is that you're saying that some of them aren't. All religions are basically aspiring for the same thing, and it'd be really arrogant to say that they're different or that one is right and that others are wrong. A few things to say about that. Firstly, what is the evidence for that belief? I say belief quite deliberately because actually if you're saying all religions are true, that is in itself a belief, isn't it, about the religions of the world. Now I can understand it's a very popular belief, particularly in the West today. It's very inclusive, or it seems so. But actually, is it true? Because again, there are many people in the world who don't share that belief, who don't think that all religions are equally valid, and it's not just Christians who would say that. So what makes you think that you're right and they're wrong? Secondly, when we say that all religions are basically the same, we can ignore the very real differences between different religious beliefs. People like to think that religions are basically the same. Someone said, that they're fundamentally similar but only superficially different. But actually, they're fundamentally different and only superficially similar. But when you start to examine religion, and you don't need to do it to great detail, you realise they're making very, very different claims about life, about God, and about ultimate reality. Now, I don't know about you, But when I was at school, my school RE teacher used to love to tell me the story about the elephants. Anyone heard the story about the elephants and the blind men? It gets used quite a lot. It's a bit cruel to blind men, but there you go. Possibly elephants as well. But the story goes that you've got an elephant and blind men that are examining the elephants, and they all feel different parts of the elephants. One person feels its side and thinks it's a brick wall. One person feels its tail, thinks it's a rope. Another feels its leg and thinks it's a tree trunk, and we'll stop at the body parts there. And they all feel these different things, and they're all kind of coming to different conclusions. And so the point that's often made from the illustration is that is like all the religions of the world. They're grasping at ultimate reality, and they're all coming to their different conclusions, but they're all really grasping at the same thing. It's a very popular illustration. There's at least a couple of problems with the illustration, though. Firstly, it can be an incredibly arrogant illustration, because the person giving the illustration is the only person in the whole story that claims to be able to see the elephants. So really what they're saying is that all the religious people of the world are blind people groping around in the dark, but we have grasped ultimate reality and we've seen what they haven't seen. So it can be very arrogant. And also there's a second problem with it, and that is that the people in this story are not all right, but they're all wrong, aren't they? Because it's not a brick wall, it's not a tree trunk, it's not a rope, it's an elephant. They're barking up the wrong tree, or the elephant. Okay? They've got it wrong. And so they're not even close to discovering what it really is all about. So we can ignore the very real differences between religions. Thirdly, tolerance, which I personally think is a really good thing, by the way. I'm all for tolerance. Tolerance actually presupposes that you disagree with people. So you think of it this way. If you agree with someone and what they believe, you don't have to tolerate them, do you? You agree with them. So tolerance presupposes that you disagree with someone, but you allow them and respect their ability to have beliefs and ideas that you disagree with. And I would say that's a really good thing. But tolerance presupposes that we will disagree with people, that we don't all have to say we believe the same thing. And then fourthly, by way of introduction, you can't get away from exclusivity, no matter how hard you try. Exclusivity is part of life, isn't it? Bath University is an exclusive establishment. You know? They didn't let anyone into this university. By the look of some of you, I'm not sure how you... No, that would be cruel. But they didn't let anyone in. You know, you had to pass exams, you had to meet the grade. That's kind of how life often works. And truth can be exclusive as well, can't it? So when you think about religion, well, think of it, actually there's really kind of four different views you could have about religion, aren't there? You could say, well, all the religions of the world are right. You could say some of them are right, one of them is right, or none of them are right. Okay? So there's kind of four views that you could hold to, or one of them you could hold to. Now, people often say, oh, you Christians, holding to point number 3, you're so arrogant because you're saying that only one religion is right. But actually think about it this way. If you hold to view number 1, that all religions are right, you're actually saying that the people who think number 2, that some of them are right, number 3, that one of them is right, or number 4, that none of them are right, are wrong. Or if you say that some of them are right, so maybe you discount some of the more wacky ones, you're disagreeing with the people who say that all of them, one of them, and none of them are right. Okay? See what I mean? Whatever you believe about religion, whether you think they're all right or none of them are right, you are going to ultimately end up disagreeing with someone. You're going to end up in a position where actually you think someone else is wrong. Because that's the nature of truth, isn't it? So rather than trying to be really politically correct and say everyone is equally right and no one is wrong, we have to actually ask the question, how do we know what is right? How do we know what is true? Are any of them right? And are there any ways in which we could look into it? Or what could you do? I guess there's one thing you could do. One thing is you could take a course in comparative religion. You could study every religion in the world. You could read all the books available, look into them all, and then decide if you're going to pick one of them to follow. Now, I've got nothing against you doing that, okay? As a Christian, I don't want to stop people investigating other religions. If the claims of Christ are worth following, they will stand out and will be unique in comparison. But there's a problem, isn't there, practically? Most of us haven't got the time to look into every religion in the world. There's quite a lot of them out there. Many religious claims. So there's something else you could do, and that is you could start with Christianity. And you're thinking, of course you would say that. You're a Christian. You're part of the Christian Union. You're bound to say that. Well, of course I am. I'll admit it. I'm totally biased. But I just want to give you 3 reasons why actually I think starting with the claims of Christianity might not be a bad idea. Okay? And seeing as you're here anyway, let's go for it. Firstly, investigate the claims of Christianity because it's unique in the way you can investigate it. What do I mean by that? How do you know whether a religious belief is true or not? That's a question, a very important question that we want to ask, isn't it? How do we know what's true? And one of the difficulties that we have when it comes to thinking about religious belief is that often that question is difficult to answer. So if you take different religious beliefs or philosophies, objectively trying to investigate their truth is difficult. Take Buddhism. How do I know whether Buddhism is actually true? At its heart is a system of philosophy, a set of teachings. And I might take them and say I like them, or I might say I don't like them, subjectively. But to say that they're true or not is very difficult, isn't it? They're not verifiable in that way, or falsifiable, you might say. Again, take the claim of Islam. The claim that Muhammad went into a cave, received the words of Allah, as we now have it as the Quran, and then has that now revealed that for everyone else to be able to read. Now again, how do I know whether the Quran is the word of God? Is there anything or any way that I could verify it? Well, it's going to be very difficult, isn't it? I can say yes, I believe it, or no, I don't. But trying to investigate or find any basis to whether it's true or not is going to be really difficult. Someone put it this way. They said how religions start is often like this. People have maybe a dream about God, an angelic encounter with God, an idea about God, and then they take their idea, their encounter, and they speak to everyone else and they tell them what they saw or heard. But actually, right at the centre of Christianity is the person of Jesus. The clue's kind of in the name, isn't it? Christ, okay? Christian. Someone once said if you take Christ out of Christian, you're left with 3 letters, I-A-N, and Ian can't help you. That's a cheesy joke, so I won't use it. Okay? But it's all about Christ. And it's centred on him, not just his teachings, because it's not just about a moral teaching, but it's an event, his life, death, and resurrection. And actually, the Bible itself says if the resurrection of Jesus didn't happen, the whole thing falls down, and there's nothing in it. It's the foundation stone on which it's built. So in comparison, you could say this. How did Christianity start? Well, after a public ministry, Christ was killed publicly. And then Christ rose from the tomb publicly. He publicly showed himself to the public, and the public told everyone else what they saw at a time when all the eyewitnesses were still alive. This spread at that time. Now, of course, you may have lots of questions about investigating the claim of the resurrection. That's why we're going to look at that on Friday night in much more detail than we've got time for today. But what I'm trying to say here is, if this is true, then actually this is investigable, if that's a word, open to investigation in a way that other religious claims aren't. You can start to ask those historical questions in a way that you can't necessarily with other claims. Which is why Christianity is often the subject of lots of investigation and questioning, because it opens itself up to it. And if I can just recommend a book for a second, this little book, Jesus for Skeptics, is a brilliant place to start, starting way back with the question of, did Jesus even exist? Down to the question of, are the historical sources for his life reliable? And then building up to the evidence for the resurrection. And you can have that for £1 on the bookstall. But that's one of the reasons why I think you might want to start with the claims of Christianity. Because there's a way that you could potentially know whether it's true that you couldn't necessarily about other religions. Okay? Here's the second thing. Investigate Christianity because it's unique in what, well, I say its founder claims. See, investigate religions, and you'll find that Muhammad claims to be a prophet, Buddha claims to be enlightened, but Jesus makes a claim about himself, which is so stupendous, isn't it? That he's not simply a prophet or pointing to God, but actually if you encounter him, you are encountering God himself. And that's been the historic belief of Christians right back to the first century. That in meeting Jesus, people were meeting the living God, stepping into human history. And Jesus showed that in 2 ways, both by what he said and by what he did. He said the kind of things that only God would say. He claimed to forgive sin, something that was seen as blasphemous for anyone other than God to say. He claimed that he was one with God, that if you had met him, you had met God. He used the very name of God from the Old Testament, the I Am, the Yahweh, the Lord, to refer to himself. And he claimed to be eternal, to predate the very founder of Judaism, Abraham. Then he doesn't just make those claims, but then he backs them up. I mean, I could walk into Bath, couldn't I, and make some incredible claims. I could say, with a big billboard on me, I am the way, the truth, and the life. But you wouldn't have to believe me. In fact, you probably want to send me off to get help, because I am not. We can make great claims, but actually the question is, did Jesus back it up? And again, that comes back to, did Jesus not only say these things, but his resurrection ultimately would vindicate those claims that he made and show that actually he wasn't just spouting the stuff off the top of his head. So he's unique in what he claims. And then thirdly, investigate Christianity because it's unique in what it offers. I don't know what you think about religion, but often when we think about religion, we kind of basically think religion works this way, okay? In religion, you're given a set of things to do, rules, regulations, rituals, a way of living, which if you do it well, means that you're in, okay? Follow the rules, store up the religious kind of brownie points, and then ultimately, when you die, you'll go to heaven, you'll come back as something better, or something like that. Something good will happen, and if you're bad, you don't keep the rules, you don't live up to the standard, then when you die, something bad will happen. That's how we kind of assume it works, right? The good people are in, the bad people are out, and this religion tells you how to be good. And there's a few problems with that some of us have. One of the issues that we have with that is that if that is true, there's two possible conclusions, isn't there, for you and for me? If the good people are in and the bad people are out, we can either think to ourselves, hey, you know what? I'm pretty good. I think I followed the rules and I'm in. But the problem with that is that I'm going to be tempted towards a great degree of pride. Because the reason why I'm in and you're not is because I'm better than you, okay? I'm morally superior. Or I might look at my life and say, actually, my life is not good. All this stuff that I've done. And so there's no hope for me. And then the temptation is going to be depressed because, woe is me. But either way, whether I'm proud or depressed, I'm going to be a bit of a pain in the neck to you, aren't I? Because that's what ultimately acceptance on the basis of my behaviour will lead to, pride or despair. How can you claim to be better than everyone else? But actually, right at the heart of the Christian claim is not that we gain God's acceptance through what we do, but the radical subversive claim that we can gain God's acceptance through what God has done in Jesus. It's not about what we do, but about what he's done. In one of the U2 songs, Bono, in a song called Grace, talks about grace walking outside of karma. And that's very interesting because the concept of karma says you get what you deserve. But the Christian concept of grace, flowing from what Jesus has done, is very much the opposite, that we get what we don't deserve. That actually all of us stand separated from God because of the stuff in our lives that's not right, and yet all of us are offered free forgiveness through Jesus' death. And that's available to anyone who's willing to receive it. And so if that is the case, then actually the steps to becoming a Christian are not to say, you know what guys, I think I'm better than you. But actually to say, I'm not better than you. I'm not better than anyone. I need forgiveness. And I found someone that's offering it to me. So actually arrogance and Christianity shouldn't go together. I'll give you an illustration of that. I was chatting to a friend of mine back in Bournemouth, who I meet up with quite often, and we have dinner together. He's an atheist, but we love to chat about different things. And on one occasion, my friend said to me, Michael, the problem with Christians is that they're just so arrogant. They're just so arrogant, they think they're better than everyone else. And so I said to my friend, well, I'm a Christian. Do you think I'm like that? And he said, no. And I thought, well, he had to say that because I was buying dinner. So I thought, well, let's go for someone else. I said, your wife, she's a Christian. Do you think she's like that? And he said, no. I thought, well, again, he has to say no because I might tell her. So then I said, look, I named a few friends and different people that he knew from town who were Christians. And I said, look, are any of these people arrogant and morally superior in their attitude towards you? And he said, well, actually, no. So I said, look, why have you rejected Christianity on the basis of this presupposition that hasn't been borne out by the reality of your experience? In other words, you say that Christianity is this, but that's not been your experience. And actually, if Christianity is about receiving God's forgiveness, not about earning his acceptance, then an arrogant attitude that says, I'm better than you, would be totally incompatible with it. And if you think Christians are a bunch of arrogant hypocrites, well, can I encourage you to check out a few Christians? I mean, not just the good-looking Christians, or you can check them out as well if you want, but you can check out all the Christians. I mean, there's lots of Christians here at Bath, and you could say, this stuff that they believe, does it make them into really arrogant people or not? So that's one thing. But another thing to say is this. If we're saying Christianity is exclusive, how can you say such exclusive claims? Well, in one sense, Christianity is exclusive, isn't it? If the claims of Jesus are true, he's saying that actually he's the only one that really has, through his death and resurrection, dealt with the real problem in our hearts to reconnect us to God. He's saying that our own religious efforts, no matter how hard we try, is not going to be enough. And yet, in another way, it's not exclusive, because Jesus says that offer of forgiveness is open to everyone. You don't have to adopt a different cultural load of baggage. That was a mistake sometimes of Christians in other generations, but it's certainly not the case. That to become a Christian, you need to accept a kind of westernized culture. And as I've said already, the places where Christianity is growing most rapidly in the world today are in places like China and Nepal and Algeria and Afghanistan and Iran. So Christianity is not a white, Western, middle-class religion at all. It's about knowing God through the forgiveness that Jesus brings. And that's open to anyone, including you and including me. Now, I don't know what you think about that. We're going to have time for questions in a second. Gareth has been writing down busily, so I'm sure we've got those. Just while we go to questions, and just to give you a chance to text in if you've not already, let me mention again two things. Firstly, the bookstall that's outside, available all week. Each book's £1 if you're not a member of the CU. So please check them out and have a look at those. There's a couple that I wrote, including this book called What Kind of God, that deals with some of these kind of moral objections to the character of God, as well as this book, Jesus for Skeptics, which deals with some of the more intellectual questions about the truth claims of Christianity and the foundation of it. So have a look at the books outside. And then also, on your desks, there are those feedback forms. And we'd love you to just take a moment now, while we have the Q&A, to fill those feedback forms in. So if you grab the pencil, grab the feedback form, and what you could all do is you can leave some comments. And if you just want to leave them anonymously, that's absolutely fine. Just leave some comments, say something like, hope the lunch is going to be better than the talk, something like that. So write whatever you like on the feedback form. And then, particularly if you're here saying, actually, I'm really intrigued, I'd love to actually look into this more. Well, what the Christian Union are going to do is, after this week is finished, they're going to run a course called Uncover, where you can investigate more, and you can bring those remaining questions that you have, and you can really check this out in that kind of environment where you aren't going to be made to look stupid for not knowing anything, and you're not going to be made to feel bad for asking big questions. So tick the box that says, tell me more, if that's what you'd like to know about, and then leave us your details, and we'll get in touch with you sometime over the next 24 hours to let you know about where those courses are going to be taking place, okay? So tell me more if you want to know more. We'd really encourage you to do that, and everyone can leave some comments to let me know what you think. Brilliant. We've got 10 minutes or so. Let's go to questions. Have you got questions already?
Yep, we've got
Great, fantastic.
If you've got more, keep sending them in. So let's start off with this one. Why do you feel the need to filter questions through text? Why don't you just open the room? Are there some questions you're particularly afraid of?
Okay. No. So I hope we're not filtering out the hard ones. I've told my colleague Gareth is not normally so kind to me as to try and do that. In fact, he'd probably filter out the most difficult ones just for the fun of it. So we're not trying to do that. We just recognise that some people don't want to speak out loud in this environment and would rather text. But what we're going to do, in fact we'd already decided, is that if you don't want to text or you haven't got credit or you haven't got reception, if you'd like to feed in questions between the text questions, then that's absolutely fine, okay? We are aware in a short period of time that we haven't got time to interact on a kind of discussional level on every issue. So we do have to keep it through the range of questions. So we're happy to go with questions that aren't on the text as well. So having said that, does anyone want to ask a question that's not on the text before we go to the next text question? Yes?
Why do you need to believe in miracles and all that, follow Jesus' lessons of peace and love and all that stuff?
Okay.
That's his message is the important thing, not the rest of it.
Okay, so why do you need to believe in miracles to follow the teaching of Jesus, love and peace? Surely that's not important. Really good question, thank you. in the New Testament itself, if you read through the New Testament, what you'll see in almost every book of the New Testament is mention about the resurrection of Jesus. Actually, in one of the books, in 1 Corinthians 15, it says this. It says, if Jesus Christ hasn't been raised from the dead, your faith is futile, you're still in your sins. It says that the resurrection is the very foundation stone of the whole thing. So that's not something I invented. That's been the way that Christians have always understood that. Because Jesus himself said that his purpose in coming into the world was not simply to give us teaching to live by, but actually to die and rise again. And so throughout his ministry, several times he predicts his own death and resurrection and says, actually, the way to God is not going to be through your obedience, because none of us can keep it fully, but through what I'm going to do for you so that you can have forgiveness. So if Jesus didn't really die, and in particular if he didn't rise again, then actually the foundation of that offer of forgiveness is a foundation which is, well, is not there. And so Jesus isn't just coming to say, I want you to love better, I want you to follow my teaching. He's saying, I've come to reconnect you with God, and it's through what I'm going to do on the cross and through my resurrection that's going to happen. If that didn't happen, then actually the very foundation stone of everything Jesus teaches kind of falls apart. But good question. Great. Thank you. Should we go to another text one? And then we'll go to another hand one. Is that all right?
Okay.
We'll alternate.
Okay.
Okay.
So what happens to people who follow other religions? Are they going to hell?
Okay. Are people going to hell? That just sounds really arrogant, doesn't it? How can you say that other people are going to hell? Firstly, I'd say on Friday we're going to look at this question in much more detail, the question of how could God send people to hell? So I really would encourage you to come back then when we have more time to look into it. But it does sound arrogant. How can you say that someone is going to hell just because they're being a Muslim, or just because they're a Hindu, or just because whatever? And actually, Jesus didn't come to condemn people. He said that, actually. You can read it in John chapter 3. He says, I've not come to condemn the world, but to save the world. You see, actually what separates us from God now and ultimately is not the fact that we tick the wrong box on the religious census, but actually the Bible says it's because of our sin, the wrong in our lives, that cuts us off from him. And that natural attitude that we have of kind of walking our own way rather than God's. And so the Bible says that stuff separates us from God. Now, if we could overcome that problem simply through being more religious, by following the 12-fold path of Buddhism or the 5 pillars of Islam, then actually Jesus' death was unnecessary because actually my religious efforts alone would be enough to sort it out. But actually the fact that Jesus actually came into this world and died on the cross makes me think that maybe my efforts alone are not good enough to overcome that barrier that's there. But as I said, Jesus offers that forgiveness to anyone who will receive it. He didn't come to rub it in, he came to rub it out, as someone said, to coin a phrase. Sorry, it's a cliche. That's probably on your fallacy thing, you can take that one off. But there you go. He says, I've come to offer forgiveness. Now you can choose to reject that, but I make it available to everyone. And that's a great offer. Brilliant. There was a question in the corner. Yeah.
I like your slide with the origins of religion, sort of 2 slides.
Yeah.
Couldn't you argue though that other religions also have sort of a pinnacle that they see other things, an event that made it originate, or also that a lot of sort of the origin of Christianity before Jesus can be related to people having sort of a dream or a religious experience that was exclusive to them and was then spread out?
Yeah, good question. Did everyone hear it? So do other religions kind of have some kind of pinnacle moment or significant thing or some event on which they're built? Couple of things to say. I guess one would be, certainly, for instance, in the claim of Buddhism, the teachings of Buddhism would not fall apart if Buddha hadn't existed. I'm not saying he didn't exist. I'm just saying that the philosophy can hold together whether or not the events happened, because it's primarily just a set of teaching, a set of wise teachings. But the New Testament itself says actually Christianity does fall apart if these things didn't happen. So that's one difference. And secondly, it's not only the claims that they make, because you may, as we were having a conversation yesterday, point out that obviously Islam makes various claims about what Muhammad did. But the way in which you can start to investigate those claims, are those things taking place in a corner very privately, or are those events quite public events that you can investigate more thoroughly and objectively? And certainly with the claim of Jesus and the resurrection, his life, ministry, death and resurrection are very, very public events. And they are therefore investigable in a different kind of way, maybe than other claims that are made. But yeah, great question. Thank you. Go to another text one.
Okay. How can you objectively know that Jesus rose from the dead? Is there historical evidence for it?
So how can you know Jesus rose from the dead? Is there evidence for it? And I want to say yes, which is why we're going to look at that on Friday nights. If you can't wait for Friday night, get the Jesus for Skeptics book and have a read in that. Now, you may say, of course, well, where is the evidence, or what is the evidence for that? Don't worry, I've seen your hand. It's fine. You seem very keen to ask the next question, so we'll let you ask it. You may say, where is the evidence for that, or what is the evidence for that? And you're going to say, well, isn't it in the New Testament? Well, going back to what we looked at yesterday, just because evidence is in the New Testament obviously doesn't mean you should just assume it's true. But equally, just because something might be in the New Testament doesn't mean we should automatically reject it as false. But actually, we want to do what any historian or scholar would do and ask the question of those sources as we would anything else. Are there reasons for accepting these things as historical sources? And of course, if the resurrection didn't happen, one of the questions that we need to come up with is an alternative explanation for the massive growth of the biggest sociological phenomenon in history. What else was it that so convinced these early Jews to so radically change their beliefs in terms of Jesus, the Messiah, and their views of things like the afterlife, so rapidly, so quickly? Not a slow evolution of belief over time, as we often see, but a very radical departure in the face of great opposition from both Jewish and Roman authorities who are keen to stop this movement from growing. Now, of course, there's lots more I could say on that. We've got 5 minutes. I'll come back to your question there, because you sounded like you want to come back on that.
No, my question was,
Okay.
why do you think people have said that their connection with spirituality?
Okay, why do people stop being
Yeah.
spiritual or religious? Yeah, really good question. Thank you. Sorry, I thought you were coming back on that one. No, it's good. It's a good question. Because it is a good question, isn't it? Why do people believe things, or why do people not believe things? I think it'd be very hard to say there's one reason why people stop believing. I've got lots of friends who aren't Christians, and lots of friends that are. Some of those that are Christians didn't used to be. They grew up in families where they came from different religious backgrounds, or they were atheists. Some of my friends that are not Christians, some of them used to claim that they were. And amongst them, I'd say there's a real variety of reasons. Sometimes people say it's because I'm intellectually convinced that these things are not true, and I've investigated it and I've looked into it. But I think it's also worth saying sometimes behind those intellectual objections, there are also sometimes moral objections. Sometimes it's the events of our lives, particularly issues like suffering, that really make people ask big questions. And one of the issues is, how do we respond to questions that we get, or doubts that we might have, for those that might have some kind of religious belief or faith? How do we interact with it? And particularly when we're confronted with things like suffering, which is why we're going to look at that issue tomorrow. How can we respond to that issue? Is there an answer to it? Sometimes the problem that people have is when they're confronted by questions or doubts about their faith, is they kind of sweep them under the carpet. And it's just like, well, I won't worry about that because I've got faith and I don't need to worry about those questions. The mistake behind that is that ultimately your carpet is going to look a bit like this, isn't it? It's going to have all these questions and doubts underneath it. Not necessarily at any single one of them insurmountable, but actually altogether it seems such a big thing that you don't know where to start. Which is why I think it's really good to actually address questions as they come, rather than just kind of putting them on one side. Investigate thoroughly and continually these things, and really look into it. So I don't think I could give one answer, this is why. I think there might be a variety of reasons, yeah. Great question. Should we go for another text
Yeah,
one?
I think maybe last one that we'll have time for. Is Christianity a get out of hell free card?
Okay. I love Monopoly, so I always love the get out of jail free card. It's always worth stashing away, isn't it? So is Christianity just a get out of hell free card? Or is it a bit like, Pascal's wager thing, just in case there is a God, just in case there's going to be a day of judgment, I better believe it just in case? Because actually you think, well, actually that's not really a very strong basis, is it, to religious belief or to Christian faith, and certainly not a very good foundation to build your life on. And I want to say, no. That's not because I don't believe that God's judgment is real. That's why we're going to think about that massive subject on Friday. But I would say actually the purpose of following Christ is not simply to avoid God's judgments, but actually to come into a relationship with God himself through Jesus. To know that now, and to know the hope that he offers in the future. It's incredible hope, not of some airy-fairy cloud called heaven, but what Jesus talks about, which is the renewal of all things, a new creation, a real physical hope, a real physical new creation. And Jesus says that the blessings of following him are incredible now and in the future. And so I'm not just a Christian because I want to avoid hell, just in case it happens to exist. I'm a Christian because I'm convinced and compelled by the evidence I've looked into for the person of Jesus. And I'm compelled by the goodness of the offer that Jesus makes to all people. And so I say those are the reasons that really compel me to it. Great questions. Guys, if you've got more questions, let me just say that if you're not going to rush off, I know it's Wednesday afternoon, maybe people don't have to rush off quite so quickly, then do stick around. There's myself, obviously I'm happy to answer. There's some of the CU guests around. There's Gareth down here, who'll be on the bookstall, and there's some other CU guests around as well. Just give us a wave. Naira and Ruth at the back there, and Rachel, sorry, Rachel down here. So go and chat to them as well. They'd really be happy to chat to you. If you've got to rush off, you can make an appointment to see one of them over coffee, and I'm sure they'll buy the coffee as well, because they're generous-hearted folks. So please do stay and chat.